Canute the Great, the formidable Viking king and conqueror, stands as the most powerful Viking ruler in history. As the sovereign of the North Sea Empire, his dominion encompassed England, Denmark and Norway. He was the only king to turn Scandinavia into a global power at the time, and this reflected his unparalleled might and influence. Canute's life and reign have been immortalized in numerous sagas and in the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, which vividly recount his extraordinary exploits. These tales celebrate his valor in battle, his astute political maneuvers, and his brilliance as a ruler. Canute's ascension to the English throne was marked by some of the fiercest battles the British Isles had ever witnessed. His relentless rivalry with Edmund Ironside is a saga in itself, chronicled in medieval manuscripts that highlight their epic confrontations and tactical genius. Even Canute's childhood was steeped in legend. Raised in Jomsborg just like his father Sweyn Forkbeard, a renowned warrior king and Viking of great repute, Canute was destined for greatness from the very beginning. This is the tale of the most powerful Viking king who ever lived, and the battles and events that led to his ascent. This is the story of Canute the Great. Canute, the son of the king of Denmark Sweyn Forkbeard, was born in the year 990 into a legacy already rich with legend and conquest. Sweyn Forkbeard had forged his own formidable path long before Canute's birth, most notably by rebelling against his father King Harald Bluetooth. Harald Bluetooth, celebrated as the first king to introduce Christianity to Denmark, met a tragic end due to this familial rebellion, paving the way for Sweyn's early ascent to the throne. This familial history of power struggles and conquest undoubtedly shaped Canute's destiny. His father Sweyn Forkbeard's passion for battle and dominance was a defining trait, and it is said that both father and son shared a bloodline descending from the legendary Sigurd Snake in the Eye, who was the son of the famed Viking hero Ragnar Lothbrok. This illustrious lineage imbued Canute with a sense of predestined greatness, a heritage of mythic proportions that fueled his ambitions and prowess. Little is known about the early life of Canute, yet certain sagas provide glimpses into his formative years. The Flateyjarbók, a 13th century Icelandic manuscript, recounts that Canute was sent to Jomsborg, a Viking stronghold situated on the southern coast of the Baltic Sea. There, he was fostered by Thorkel the Tall, a warrior of legendary prowess and a prominent member of the Jomsvikings, an elite order of Viking mercenaries. The Jomsvikings were renowned for their unwavering dedication to the worship of the Old Norse gods and their exceptional combat skills. They would fight for any lord who could afford their considerable fees. Admission into the Jomsvikings was no small feat. Prospective members were required to demonstrate their strength and valor, often through a ritual duel known as Holmgang with an existing Jomsviking. Given his royal blood and the illustrious reputation of his lineage, Canute's path to joining the Jomsvikings was laden with expectation. His father Sweyn Forkbeard had also been raised by the order's founder Palnatoke, which would only burden Canute if he failed. To prove himself worthy of admission, Canute would have had to undergo and succeed in the rigorous trials set forth by the Jomsvikings, demonstrating his mettle and earning his place among the formidable warriors. This period in Jomsborg was crucial in shaping Canute's character and honing his martial skills. Under the mentorship of Thorkel the Tall, he would have absorbed invaluable lessons in leadership, strategy and combat, preparing him for the epic challenges and conquests that lay ahead. This legendary upbringing, steeped in the traditions and rigour of the Jomsvikings, undoubtedly contributed to Canute's prowess as a ruler and warrior. laying the foundation for his future as a mighty Viking king. A description of Canute appears in the 13th century Icelandic Conquest saga. Canute was exceptionally tall and strong, and the handsomest of men, all except for his nose that was thin, high-set, and rather crooked. He had a fair complexion and a fine, thick head of hair. His eyes were better than those of other men, being both more handsome and keener sighted. In the Knutsdrapa, an Old Norse poem, there is a statement that Canute was of no great age when he first went to war. Due to this, there is speculation that he could have either seen action with the Jomsvikings, or that he could have went raiding with his father Sweyn Forkbeard during his early teens. In the year 1002, a dark and tragic chapter unfolded in the history of England. King Ethelred the Unready decreed a brutal massacre, targeting thousands of Danes and Northmen residing within his kingdom. This ruthless command did not spare even the innocent women and children, resulting in widespread carnage and sorrow. Ethelred had been driven half mad by relentless Viking raids on his kingdom, and in a rage, he ordered the extermination of all the Danes that had sprung up on his island, resulting in much death. Among the many victims of this horrific event were Gunhild, the sister of Sweyn Forkbeard, the formidable king of Denmark, and her husband, Palig Toksen, the Danish ealdorman of Devonshire. Their deaths were not merely personal losses, but a grievous affront to Sweyn Forkbeard, igniting a fierce desire for retribution. During this time, Thorkel the Tall would become the chief of the Jomsvikings and would launch his own invasion of England. He would burn much of the land, extorted the nobles, and King Ethelred himself, and he would also besiege Canterbury, capturing its wealth, and used the city as his base of operations. However, Thorkel would eventually side with King Ethelred of England, as he married one of his daughters and was no doubt promised much. Canute must have been recalled by his father Sweyn to his court before the Jomsviking occupation of England, as Canute is only recorded to have landed in England with his father in the Peterborough Chronicle. The St. Brice's Day massacre set in motion a chain of events that would alter the course of history. Sweyn Forkbeard, driven by a blend of grief and fury, resolved to exact revenge. He launched a full-scale invasion of England, a campaign marked by relentless determination and strategic brilliance. Accompanying him on this formidable quest was his son Canute, who was now ready to sail beside his father and finally whet his sword. Together, father and son embarked on this vengeful expedition, their journey across the sea fueled by the desire to avenge the blood of their kin and reclaim honour. The invasion was not merely a quest for revenge, but also a pivotal moment that would shape the future of England and its rulers. Thorkel the Tall had caused so much disarray in England that Sweyn used this chaotic time to prepare his invasion, and he soon departed. The medieval Peterborough Chronicle reports the following events. Before August, King Sweyn arrived with his fleet at Sandwich. He swiftly moved through East Anglia into the mouth of the Humber River, then sailed up the Trent River to Gainsborough. Earl Uhtred and all of Northumbria quickly submitted to him, as did the people of the Kingdom of Lindsey and the 5 boroughs. Each region provided hostages. When Sweyn realised that everyone had surrendered, he ordered his forces to be supplied and given horses. He then led the main part of his invasion force south, while some troops and hostages stayed with his son Canute. After crossing Watling Street, they advanced to Oxford, where the townspeople quickly surrendered and gave more hostages. From there, they moved to Winchester, where the same happened, and then continued eastward to London. While Sweyn invaded the north, he married his young son Canute to an English noblewoman named Elgifu to seal the North's loyalty. The couple would go on to have a son named Sven. the Londoners would resist the forces of Sweyn Forkbeard due to the ferocity of their new commander Thorkel the Tall, who now fought for the English. Although the Vikings managed to repel Sweyn's army, the Viking king simply abandoned the siege and went on to conquer other areas of England. Eventually, the entirety of England succumbed to the overwhelming might of Sweyn's Viking horde. King Ethelred, faced with the relentless advance of his enemies, sent his sons Edward and Alfred to the relative safety of Normandy. He himself sought refuge, spending Christmas on the Isle of Wight, before joining his own sons in exile. With England under his control, Sweyn established his base in Gainsborough in Lincolnshire. From this strategic location, he began the arduous task of organising his vast new kingdom, laying the foundations for what he hoped would be a prosperous reign. However, fate had other plans. On the 3rd of February in the year 1014, after a mere 5 weeks as the ruler of England, Sweyn unexpectedly died. The exact cause of death remains a mystery. Some theories suggest that he was assassinated, possibly by those loyal to the deposed Ethelred. Other accounts propose that Sweyn met his end after falling from a horse, and others believed he succumbed to natural causes at the age of around 50. Despite his brief rule, Sweyn Forkbeard's impact on England was profound, as his brilliance and brutal reputation is what kept the English earls in check, and upon his death, chaos would unfold. The leading English noblemen, wary of Danish rule, dispatched a delegation to negotiate the restoration of King Ethelred to the throne. However, their support came with stringent conditions. The terms of this agreement held significant constitutional importance in early English history, marking the first recorded pact between a king and his subjects. This unprecedented accord underscored a deep-seated distrust which many of the English noblemen harboured towards Ethelred, prompting their initial submission to Sweyn. Determined to reclaim his throne, Ethelred launched an expedition against Canute and his Danish allies. However, only the people of the Kingdom of Lindsey, which is modern North Lincolnshire, remained loyal to Canute. Ethelred's campaign began with the objective of recapturing London. He received crucial support from Olaf Haraldsson, a formidable Norwegian leader. According to the Icelandic historian Snorri Sturluson, Olaf led a daring and successful assault on London Bridge, commanding a fleet of ships that played a pivotal role in the battle. Following this triumph, Olaf continued to assist Ethelred in retaking London and other parts of the country. Faced with mounting resistance and the resurgence of Ethelred's forces, Canute and his army decided to withdraw from England in April of the year 1014. This retreat left their allies in England to bear the brunt of Ethelred's retribution, a grim consequence of their steadfast support for the Danish prince. Thus, the tides of power shifted once more, as England's landscape was reshaped by alliances, betrayals, and the relentless pursuit of the throne. The saga of Ethelred's restoration and Canute's temporary retreat illustrates the volatile nature of medieval politics and the intricate web of loyalties that defined this tumultuous period in English history. Upon the death of Sweyn Forkbeard, his younger son Harold was named the King of Denmark. It was to this Scandinavian sanctuary that Canute fled, seeking refuge and support in the court of his brother. In the halls of Danish power, Canute found solace and, more importantly, the resources to pursue his grand ambitions. For Canute had just lost everything. His father was dead, and his claim to the English throne was now nothing but a dream. Harold, now the ruler of Denmark, understood the importance of aiding his exiled brother. Canute, undeterred by past setbacks, began to meticulously assemble a formidable fleet. With Harold's backing, he gathered ships and warriors, preparing for another bold attempt to claim the English throne. He would not let his father's conquest of the land be in vain, and he had to reclaim the land he now saw as his by right. Thorkel the Tall, once the staunch defender of Ethelred, ultimately forsook his service to join forces with Canute, swearing fealty to the young Viking leader. Despite having previously deserted the Viking cause and fought against Canute's father Sweyn during the siege of London, Thorkel's allegiance was a strategic and significant gain for Canute, for Thorkel was no ordinary warrior. He commanded the Jomsvikings, the elite group of Viking mercenaries famed over Scandinavia, renowned for their exceptional combat skills. Moreover, Thorkel had a deep personal connection to Canute, having served as his foster father. This bond of kinship and shared history added profound significance to their reconciliation. Thus, Canute's campaign was enhanced with the might of the Jomsvikings and the wisdom of a seasoned warrior who had once been his guardian. He also had the aid of his brother Harold, the King of Denmark, who provided many men and a fleet of longships. Moreover, Canute sought the assistance of Boleslaw the Brave, the Duke of Poland, who generously lent a contingent of Polish troops to bolster Canute's invasion. This alliance was further strengthened by the support of the Northmen. Eric Hakonsson, the esteemed Earl of Lade and Governor of Norway, pledged his aid to the young prince. Eric not only led his men personally, but also provided thousands of battle-hardened Vikings, renowned for their ferocity and skill in combat. Thus, in the summer of the year 1015, Canute would sail to England with a huge army, estimated to be 10,000 strong, with over 200 longships. He was at the head of an army of Vikings from all over Scandinavia, and the young prince would glide across the North Sea, with his aim being the reconquest of England, battle reputation, wealth, and glory. According to the Peterborough Chronicle manuscript, in September of the year 1015, Canute came into Sandwich and straight away sailed around Kent to Wessex, until he came to the mouth of the Frome, and harried in Dorset and Wiltshire and Somerset. It is said that this bloody war was of the same intensity of the battles of Alfred the Great, foreshadowing an epic conflict. A passage from Queen Emma's Iconium provides a picture of Canute's fleet. There were so many kinds of shields that you could have believed that troops of all nations were present. Gold shone on the prows, silver also flashed on the variously shaped ships. Furthermore, on this great expedition, there was present no slave, no low-born man, or no man weakened by age. All were noble, strong, and sufficiently fit for any type of fighting. When Canute landed in England, he would reunite with his wife Elfgifu and his son Sweyn. Elfgifu would fall pregnant again, and would give birth to a second son, remembered to history as Harold Harefoot. According to the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, during Canute's initial invasion, King Ethelred of England was gravely ill, and due to this, the men of England did not have a figurehead to rally behind, or a decisive leader. During this time, the ealdorman Edric Striona would gather his forces, while the Etheling Edmund mustered his troops in the north. However, when they were united, Edric attempted to betray Edmund, though he failed in his treacherous endeavour. As a result, their forces would disperse without engaging in battle, yielding ground to Canute's forces. Seizing a strategic moment, the ealdorman Edric would defect to Canute's side, and consequently the men of Wessex submitted to Canute's authority, offering hostages and horses to bolster the Viking army. Canute's forces entrenched themselves into the ancestral seat of the king, Wessex, and he solidified his control there over midwinter. In the year 1016, Canute departed from his stronghold in Wessex with his formidable army, accompanied by the treacherous ealdorman Edric. They crossed the Thames into Mercia during the harsh midwinter, ravaging the land, burning villages, and slaying all who stood in their way. In response, Edmund the Etheling, the eldest son of King Ethelred, began to gather his forces. However, the assembled troops were adamant that they would not fight unless the king himself joined their ranks. When this did not come to pass, they abandoned the expedition, each man returning to his home. Subsequently, the English forces were summoned once more, with a stern decree that every able man must join under severe penalties. Yet, the king, extremely ill, could not make the journey. The king soon discovered that those who were supposed to aid him were in fact plotting his betrayal. Amidst this turmoil, Edmund rode to Northumbria to seek the support of Earl Uhtred, hoping to rally an army against King Canute. Responding to Edmund's call, Uhtred raised a Northumbrian army. Together, they began to ravage Mercia in retaliation against the treacherous ealdorman Edric, who had betrayed them and sided with Canute. In the meantime, Canute led his Viking horde northward, advancing to York. His path was marked by the burning and pillaging of towns and villages, leaving a trail of devastation in his wake. Upon hearing of Canute's movements, Uhtred ceased his plundering and hastened northwards, realizing his lands had been overrun by the Viking army. Realizing the dire situation, he submitted to Canute, along with all the Northumbrians, delivering hostages as a sign of their surrender. Despite this, Canute ordered Uhtred's assassination, and following his death, Canute appointed Eric, the governor of Norway, as the new Earl of Northumbria, replacing Uhtred. After securing the north, Canute moved southwards, taking a different route through the west. By Easter, his entire army had returned to their ships, and during this time, Edmund the Etheling would journey to London to be with his ill father. Prince Canute would soon set sail with his entire fleet towards London. Yet, before his ships could arrive, King Ethelred passed away, marking the end of his reign and ushering in a new chapter in England's turbulent history. King Ethelred met his end on April the 23rd in the year 1016, and London's citizens and councillors promptly crowned his son Edmund as their king. Meanwhile, the rest of the Witan convened at Southampton, electing Canute as the new ruler of England. Thus, Canute found himself recognised as king, though his reign was far from secure. Half of the English nobles had only submitted to him out of fear, and he knew his newly acquired throne would be fiercely contested by the valiant Edmund. In a desperate bid to defend his homeland, Edmund embarked on a campaign of ferocious resistance. As the Danes laid siege to London, Edmund journeyed to Wessex, the very heart of England, and his ancestral stronghold. There, the people rallied to his cause, and he swiftly assembled a formidable army. His clashes with the Danes and their English supporters were brutal, bloody encounters, yet they remained inconclusive. Undeterred, Edmund then broke the siege of London, where the city's valiant citizens had resisted the Danish onslaught. In a bloody battle near Brentford, Edmund achieved a decisive victory over the Vikings, forcing them to renew their siege efforts. Edmund's resolve was unshakable. He would return to Wessex, rally more troops, and once again would march to relieve London. His crushing victory at Oxford sent Canute's forces reeling, and Edmund would relentlessly pursue them into Kent. The notorious Edric Striona, sensing the shifting tides of war, switched allegiances again to join Edmund. Striona's betrayal underscored the desperate and chaotic nature of the conflict, as both sides grappled for dominance amidst the blood-soaked landscape. Edmund's defiance painted the land red with the blood of his foes. He fought tirelessly to reclaim England from the Danish invaders, his prowess in battle earning him the epithet Ironside. The will of his army was unyielding as iron, their spirits unbreakable, even in the face of overwhelming odds. Edmund would prove his mettle as a warrior king, amidst the chaos and carnage of a nation in turmoil. King Edmund Ironside and King Canute would face off in a climactic battle at Assandun. Edmund had assembled the whole nation of England and had a considerable bigger army, but Canute had the might of Scandinavia and the battle-hardened Vikings at his disposal. According to Queen Emma's Iconium, this is what transpired during the battle. Edmund endeavoured to expel the king and the Danes from English soil, amassing a formidable force for a sudden assault. Yet the Danes swiftly learned of his plan, abandoning their ships and preparing to face whatever doom awaited them. They carried with them a banner of eerie and strange nature, a piece of plain white silk upon which no figure was visible, but in times of war, a raven appeared on it as if by dark magic, its beak opening, wings flapping, and feet restless in victory. Looking out for this, Thorkel said, "Let us fight manfully, comrades, for no danger threatens us, for the restive raven of the prophetic banner bears witness." Emboldened by these words, the Danes, clad in mail and armour, met the English at Assandun, and there, before the battle, Ealdorman Edric of Mercia addressed his Mercian ranks. "Let us flee, O comrades, and snatch our lives from imminent death, or else we will fall forthwith, for I know the hardihood of the Danes." Concealing his banner, he then turned his back on the enemy, leading many soldiers away from the battlefield. It was later revealed that this act of cowardice was a calculated betrayal, a promise to the Danes in exchange for favour. Witnessing the treachery and surrounded by the enemy, Edmund Ironside rallied his men with a cry and gave a passionate speech. He then advanced into the midst of the enemy, and the battle would begin. A brutal infantry battle ensued, with the outnumbered Danes refusing to retreat, choosing death over the shame of flight. They fought with relentless vigour from the 9th hour of the day until nightfall. The warriors did not falter in the dark, driven by the desire to vanquish their foes. Exhausted, the English began to falter, contemplating retreat as the Danes, unified in their resolve, seemed invincible in their rage-fueled frenzy. Overwhelmed by the relentless Danish assault and the lengthening shadows, the English broke ranks and fled, falling before their pursuers. The battle is mentioned briefly in the Canute saga, which quotes a verse of skaldic poetry. "You worked well in the shield wall, warrior king. Brown was the flesh of bodies, served to the bloodbird. In the slaughter you won, sire, with your sword, north of the Danes' woods." Edmund Ironside himself would survive the battle, though he was significantly wounded. He would seek refuge and potential allies, possibly aiming to join forces with his supporters in Wales. However, Canute was restless within his pursuit, and he tracked him down to the Forest of Dean. Legend has it that Edmund Ironside, despite his injuries, boldly challenged Canute to single combat. The Danish king, however, admiring the courage and tenacity of his rival, proposed a different solution. Although Canute had been trained by the formidable Vikings, Edmund Ironside was a warrior of known renown, and the Danish king declined the offer. Though Canute held the power to crush Edmund's battered forces, he was moved by a profound respect for the warrior king. In a gesture of peace, Canute offered a compromise. Edmund would retain the kingdom of Wessex, while Canute would rule over Northumbria, Mercia, and East Anglia. An intriguing clause was also added to their treaty. Upon the death of either monarch, the survivor would inherit the entire kingdom. With this accord, the realm found a temporary peace under the shared rule of the Saxon and Viking kings. The ink on the treaty had barely dried before fate intervened to enforce its terms. By November of the year 1016, Edmund Ironside succumbed to his wounds and the relentless toll of battle, his life extinguished in the prime of his valor. Some sources claim that Edmund was murdered, although the circumstances of his death are unknown, most historians believing he succumbed to his wounds. However, another theory presents itself. Henry of Huntingdon wrote, "When Edmund, fearful and most formidable to his enemies, was prospering in his kingdom, he went one night to the lavatory to answer a call of nature. There, the son of Ealdorman Edric, who by his father's plan was concealed in the pit of the privy, struck the king twice with a sharp knife in the private parts, and leaving the weapon in his bowels fled away." Thus, one account of his death was that Edric Striona had him assassinated, but Canute still may have had him killed. His death was a sorrowful end to his defiant resistance, but it also signified the dawn of a new era. As the fallen king was laid to rest, the Saxon crown passed to Canute. The formidable Viking warrior was now crowned as the undisputed ruler of England. Thus, Canute ascended to the throne in the year 1017, his dominion extending across the entire English realm, and even the West Saxons now accepted him as king. This transition marked the beginning of a new period of relative stability and integration, as Canute's reign sought to unify the diverse peoples and cultures within his kingdom. Canute held such profound respect for his fallen adversary that on the anniversary of Edmund's death, he made a solemn visit to his tomb. In a gesture of deep reverence and honour, he placed upon it a cloak adorned with peacocks. These magnificent birds, symbols of resurrection, were meant to aid Edmund in his salvation. This act reflected an enduring bond of respect between two great warrior kings, whose lives and fates had been so intricately entwined. At the age of 26, Canute had conquered his new kingdom, and as the Danish King of England, he swiftly moved to eliminate any potential threats from the remnants of the once powerful Wessex dynasty. The first year of his reign was marred by the executions of several English noblemen who he deemed suspect. Ethelred's son, Eadwig Atheling, fled England only to be killed on Canute's orders. Similarly, Edmund Ironside's sons sought refuge abroad. Ethelred's sons by Emma of Normandy found protection under their relatives in the Duchy of Normandy. In addition to dealing with the old English nobility, Canute would begin to redistribute the earldoms. Initially, Canute retained personal control over Wessex, while Northumbria was entrusted to Eric Hakonson. East Anglia was given to Thorkel the Tall, and Mercia remained under the control of Edric Striona. This distribution of power rewarded Canute's key generals and staunchest supporters. Thorkel, for his critical role in the war with his fierce Joms Vikings, Eric, for providing a substantial number of battle-hardened Northmen, and Edric, for his timely desertion of the English, which allowed Canute to secure victory at the Battle of Assandun. However, this initial power arrangement proved to be short-lived. During a meeting at the Royal Palace in London with Canute and his high-ranking earls and generals, Edric was accused of having wavering loyalty and hesitating between both sides during the war. Canute then declared, "Pay this man what we owe him," whereupon the Northman Eric Hakonson promptly decapitated Edric with an axe. Canute then ordered Edric's body to be thrown over the city wall, leaving it unburied. His head was placed upon a pole, atop the highest battlement of the Tower of London, a grim and fitting end for England's most infamous traitor. Although Canute was married to Elfgifu of Northampton and had 2 sons with her, he sought the hand of Emma of Normandy, the widow of the late King of England. Seeking to bridge the past and the future, Canute took Emma as his wife. Their union produced 2 children, Harthcanute and Gunhilda. Historical records describe their marriage as a happy one, with both partners diligently fulfilling their roles as rulers. Emma played a pivotal role in mending the strained relationship between Canute and the Church. Although baptized as a Christian, Canute had previously caused considerable damage to church property during his raids. Emma took it upon herself to oversee the reconstruction of these churches and replenish their coffers, often at the crown's expense. She collaborated efficiently with the church, donating land and presenting many beautiful and valuable items, such as a golden cross to the new construction at Winchester. Emma frequently ruled in England alone, while Canute travelled extensively. What began as a political marriage gradually evolved into a loving union, demonstrating the strength and adaptability of both partners in their shared reign. Canute's brother Harold, the King of Denmark, may have attended Canute's coronation in the year 1016. Following the ceremony, Harold would return to Denmark, taking part of his fleet with him. However, Harold would die childless due to an unknown cause still young in the year 1018, prompting Canute to journey to Denmark to secure his succession to the Danish crown. It appears that some Danes opposed him, leading to an attack on the Wends. During this expedition, one of Canute's Englishmen, Godwin, gained the king's trust by leading a successful nighttime raid against the Wendish encampment. Due to this, Canute would give Godwin the earldom of Wessex. With Canute's ascent on the Danish throne now firmly established, he returned to England in the year 1020. He appointed Ulf Jarl, the husband of his sister Estrid, as the regent of Denmark. Ulf was also entrusted with the care of Harthcanute, Canute's son by Queen Emma, whom he had designated as his heir. This arrangement ensured the stability and continuity of Canute's reign in Denmark, while he continued to govern in his headquarters in England. Olaf Haraldsson had led a daring and successful assault against Canute, while King Ethelred the Unready was still alive, driving Canute out of England before his eventual re-invasion. Olaf, a descendant of Harald Fairhair, the first King of Norway, saw an opportunity as Norway was in disarray after the death of King Sweyn Forkbeard. In the year 1015, Olaf returned to Norway and declared himself king, securing the allegiance of 5 petty kings in the Norwegian uplands. In the year 1016, at the Battle of Nesjar, he decisively defeated Earl Sweyn, one of the Earls of Lade, and the de facto ruler of Norway. This victory solidified Olaf's claim to the throne, and marked the beginning of his reign over a unified Norway. Upon Canute's return to his main headquarters in England, King Olaf Haraldsson of Norway and Anud Jacob of Sweden saw their chance and began launching attacks against Denmark. Seizing upon these incursions, Jarl Ulf cleverly provided the Danish freemen with a pretext to accept the young Harthcanute, who was still a child, as their king. This strategic maneuver allowed Ulf to rule the kingdom as his regent, significantly elevating his status and consolidating his power within the realm. When news of these incursions reached Canute, he swiftly set sail for Denmark. This culminated in the epic Battle of Helge. Canute's navy was immense, with his flagship reputed to be 80 meters long. In a strategic move, the Swedish and Norwegian kings constructed a large dam of peat and lumber on the river. As the Danish navy sailed, the dam was breached, releasing a torrent of water that drowned many Danes and Englishmen. However, the main strength of Canute's fleet lay outside the river harbour. Once the ships in the harbour were destroyed, the remaining fleet converged from all directions. Realising they had no chance against the rest of the fleet, the kings Olaf and Canute Jacob ordered their ships to retreat. Had the battle continued, they would have faced significant losses, as Canute's fleet vastly outnumbered theirs. King Canute, however, chose not to pursue them. Following the battle, the Norwegian nobles, brimming with discontent and dissatisfaction, rallied behind the invasion led by King Canute of Denmark. With the Norse jarls and nobles no longer supporting Olaf Haraldsson, he found himself with little choice but to flee. Olaf would go into exile in the distant lands of the Kievan Rus. This left Canute as the prominent leader in Scandinavia. Sometime after the battle, he subjugated the core provinces of Norway, where he even minted his own coins, further cementing his dominance in the region. In the year 1028, at an assembly in Trondheim, he was officially crowned the king. He took on the grand title of the King of all England, Denmark, Norway, and the part of Sweden. This coronation marked him as the most powerful Viking king in living memory, ruling over what became known as the North Sea Empire. Ulf Jarl had tried to seize power by crowning Harthacnut as the King of Denmark, thus making himself the regent. His participation in the Battle of Helge ultimately did not earn him Canute's forgiveness. Some accounts tell of a tense moment between the brothers-in-law during a chess game. An argument would flare, and the following day, one of Canute's guards, acting with the king's blessing, killed Ulf. This act starkly demonstrated Canute's ruthless nature towards those he mistrusted. With his adversaries in Scandinavia subdued and seemingly at ease, Canute graciously accepted an invitation to witness the ascension of the Holy Roman Emperor Conrad II in Rome. Departing from Denmark, he journeyed to the coronation ceremony in Easter of the year 1027, an event of immense prestige for medieval European rulers. During his return voyage, Canute penned a letter informing his English subjects of his plans from afar. He declared himself the King of all England and Denmark, of the Norwegians, and of some of the Swedes, affirming his expansive domain and authority. Embracing his role as a Christian monarch, Canute expressed that his pilgrimage to Rome was motivated by a desire to repent for his sins, seek redemption, and ensure the security of his subjects. He sought to negotiate with the Pope. Additionally, he sought to improve conditions for pilgrims and merchants travelling the road to Rome, reflecting his commitment to governance and faith. This is what Canute wrote in his own words. I spoke with the Emperor himself and the Lord Pope, and the princes there, about the needs of all my people of my entire realm, both English and Danes, that a juster law and securer peace might be granted to them on the road to Rome, and that they should not be strained by so many barriers along the road, and harassed by unjust tolls. And the Emperor agreed, and likewise King Robert, who governs most of these toll gates, and all the magnates confirmed by edict that my people, both merchants and others who want to travel to make their devotions, might go to Rome and return without being afflicted by barriers and toll collectors, in firm peace and secure in a just law. As the ruler of three kingdoms, Canute's stature in Europe was formidable, highlighted by his participation alongside the King of Burgundy in the imperial procession, standing shoulder to shoulder with the Emperor on a shared pedestal, reflecting Canute's scope of power in the broader realm of early medieval Europe. Canute's pilgrimage to Rome was a triumph, celebrated in the Canute by Sigvat the Skald, who praised Canute, describing him as dear to the emperor and close to Peter. In the medieval Christian world, a king believed to have divine favour could expect prosperity within his realm. This strengthened Canute's position not only within the church and his people, but also in fostering alliances that resolved conflicts within his kingdom. Clever and seasoned in battle, Canute cultivated an image as a just Christian king, statesman, diplomat, and crusader against injustice. He would quickly change the narrative all over Europe, from a Viking conqueror to a just and administrative king. Canute was to return to Denmark from Rome, arrange for its security, and afterwards set sail to England. However, in the year 1030, Olaf would return for the Norwegian crown, which would result in the Battle of Stiklestad. Although Canute was not present at the battle, his forces crushed Olaf's, thus leaving Canute as the undisputed monarch of Norway. Canute's conquests and the stern measures he took against the displaced ruling dynasty had strained his relationship with the church. Rumours circulated that his upbringing in the pagan stronghold of Jomsborg and him having two wives, Emma of Normandy and Elfgifu of Northampton, conflicted with the church's teachings. Canute sought to mend these rifts and embarked on a campaign to rehabilitate the English churches and monasteries that had long suffered under Viking raids, replenishing their treasuries and overseeing the constructions of new religious institutions. His efforts extended to supporting monastic communities zealously, reflecting his commitment to Christianity, as Denmark and Norway themselves were still on the path to becoming Christian nations. A bishop wrote this about King Canute in a medieval manuscript. "When we saw the gift that you sent us, we were amazed at your knowledge, as well as your faith, since you, whom we had heard to be a pagan prince, we now know you to be not only a Christian, but also a most generous donor to God's churches and servants." However, the sincerity of Canute's religious convictions remain ambiguous. While he demonstrated reverence for Christianity through his actions, historians debate whether his piety was genuine or not. It could have been a strategy to consolidate his rule and secure the loyalty of his subjects. Despite his Christian reforms, traces of pagan traditions persisted in Canute's court, evident in the poetry that celebrated Norse mythology, a departure from the strict adherence to Christian doctrine observed by leaders like Saint Olaf of Norway. His pilgrimage to Rome in the year 1027, however, could reflect his deep commitment to Christianity. Historians speculate that his journey to witness the coronation of Conrad II was not merely a diplomatic gesture, but a sincere effort to foster goodwill between two influential realms. Despite the complexities of his personal life, which included two simultaneous marriages, a practice frowned upon by the church, Canute's reputation as a devout man endures. His treatment of adversaries within the Christian community was often severe. During his rule, Canute achieved a remarkable consolidation of power, bridging the English and Danish realms and exerting dominance over both Scandinavian territories and the British Isles. His military campaigns reshaped the landscape of Viking influence, redirecting the focus of Norse conquest back towards Scandinavia. Canute's reinstatement of the laws of King Edgar facilitated governance across his diverse domains, establishing a legal framework that accommodated the cultural and legal practices of both Saxons and Scandinavians. Canute's administrative reforms extended to economic policies as well. His efforts to standardize coinage further promoted economic stability and facilitated trade across his North Sea region. In his royal court, Canute fostered a diverse environment that included English and Scandinavian advisors, setting the stage for the gradual emergence of an Anglo-Scandinavian society. The era of Canute marked a unique chapter in Viking history, where the once fearless raiders transitioned into a global power. Due to this, Canute would gain the epithet Canute the Great. Across the massive North Sea Empire, from Scandinavia to England, Canute's reign became the stuff of myth, inspiring narratives that celebrated his extraordinary life and enduring impact on the medieval world. His legend would grow so large that stories of Canute's power would make people believe he had supernatural abilities. In one episode, Henry of Huntingdon tells the story of King Canute and the tide. Canute set his throne by the seashore and commanded the incoming tide to halt and not wet his feet and robes. Yet, continuing to rise as usual, the tide dashed over his feet and legs, without respect to his royal person. Then the king leapt backwards, saying, "Let all men know how empty and worthless is the power of kings, for there is none worthy of the name, but he whom heaven, earth, and sea obey by eternal laws." He then hung his gold crown on a crucifix, and never wore it again, to the honour of God the Almighty King. In the year 1030, Canute the Great appointed his first son Sweyn as the King of Norway. With Sweyn only being 14 years old, his mother Ælfgifu ruled as regent on his behalf. This appointment greatly disappointed many Norwegian nobles, who had hoped to assume power after the death of Olaf Haraldsson. Nobles such as Einar Indridason felt particularly betrayed, believing Canute had promised them positions of authority. The 1030s proved to be challenging years across Europe. Danish policy in Norway underwent significant changes, with increased royal involvement and the implementation of stringent taxes. These actions laid the groundwork for the widespread resistance against the new regime, echoing the opposition that King Olaf had previously encountered. According to the sagas, Ælfgifu and Sweyn's heavy tax demands and new laws fostered resentment towards Canute, the overlord of the North Sea Empire. In the year 1035, Canute the Great would die in England. His brilliance is what held his vast empire together, and with his passing, numerous claimants emerged for his many kingdoms. The ensuing power struggles reflected the nature of Canute's dominion. In Norway, the discontented noble Einar Indridason took decisive action. He travelled to Russia to bring back Magnus, the son of the old king Olaf Haraldsson. When Magnus arrived in Norway, the people rallied to his cause, rejecting Danish rule. Sweyn, unable to maintain his kingdom, fled back to Denmark, where he died shortly afterwards. In the year 1035, Magnus was proclaimed the King of Norway at the tender age of 11, marking the end of Danish rule and the beginning of a new dynasty. Meanwhile, in England, Canute's second son with Ælfgifu of Northampton, Harold Harefoot, ascended to the throne. Harold's reign was marked by political intrigue and strife, as he sought to consolidate power in a kingdom that had been deeply influenced by his father's legacy, and because he was seen to have stolen his brother Harthcanute's throne, Harthcanute would also become a king, and inherited his father's ancestral kingdom of Denmark, but he would plan war on his half-brother, Harold Harefoot. Before the two sons of Canute could go to war, Harold Harefoot would die, still young in the year 1040, leaving no heirs to continue his line. Harthcanute, Canute's son with Emma of Normandy, succeeded Harold as the King of England. His time on the throne was fraught with challenges, as he attempted to govern both England and Denmark. Harthcanute managed to maintain his grip on power for 2 years as the monarch of both nations. Yet, His rule was cut short when he died childless in the year 1042, poisoned at a wedding. This abrupt and violent end symbolised the fragility of the once mighty empire that Canute had meticulously built. Thus, within 7 years of Canute's death in the year 1035, by the year 1042, his entire line was extinguished, all of his male heirs had perished, and the vast dominion he had ruled, stretching across the North Sea, was reduced to a shadow of its former glory. The North Sea Empire, which had seemed impregnable under Canute's formidable leadership, rapidly disintegrated. His ambitious vision of a unified and powerful northern realm was shattered, leaving behind only the remnants of fleeting grandeur and the whispers of legend. The empire Canute forged was inherently unstable, dependent on his brilliance, reputation, and alliances. The North Sea Empire under Canute's rule were the only time where the Vikings became a global power. This was a period where the Vikings were more than marauders. They were rulers of a vast, interconnected realm. However, the mightiest of empires can crumble, leaving behind only stories of their former greatness and the enduring myth of their legendary rulers. I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to like, subscribe and share, and I'll see you all soon for another history profile.